Hey, this is Notser, and I wanted to showcase my defensive battleship game from my Sunday stream. It was in the Montana, and we had a great game. And if you want to watch it on stream, you sure can, but I'm going to give you a replay at a higher fidelity, and I'm going to talk about the technicals, because I want to try and improve the battleship play as much as I can. And one of the best ways that I can see to do that is to offer my input on how I would accomplish that. So, equipment for defensive battleships, and the Montana is the one I love. Maybe, just maybe 3 million. So, with a defensive battleship, there's not a lot of choices that would differ from any other battleship build. In my opinion, main armament mod 1 and damage control system mod 1 is like peanut butter and jelly. It really goes well together, and it's very defensive, so of course you're going to take them in a defensive battleship. The Montana has no accuracy in slot 3 because it's American. That's right, we get in slot 6. But I choose faster torturers. It's a nice upgrade to counteract the active maneuvering nature of this build style. Now, the most important aspect to this style of play, in my opinion, involves the player's ability to perform an active dodge. And that basically is asking the player to maneuver the ship into a different position than the opposing ship who just fired on them predicted their ship would end up being. This is very real, obviously, as you might imagine. There's active dodge scenarios, Yamato avoiding torpedoes. This is more shell active dodging, which is much harder than avoiding torpedoes. But in some ways, it's not as hard. So yes, rudder. The change of the rudder position directly affects the speed of the ship. The greater the rudder, the more drag it creates, the slower the ship. So it creates an opportunity where you can almost put the brakes on when a player attempts to land a shell on you. And the higher gun velocity or slower gun velocity will affect this and give you a larger window or a smaller window to perform this maneuver. So rudder, definitely, in my opinion. It says damage control system mod 2. This is a stationary playstyle. I just think rudder is necessary for active dodge. You could just adjust the speed of the ship, but it would not cut the amount of speed off of the ship as involving the rudder would. And if you involve the rudder, then there's 2 planes that the opposing ship must consider in his counter battery. If you only change the heading speed, then the player can still stay on the same axis. He just has to adjust how much he's going to lead you. And, you know, there's a whole cat and mouse with this, so it's really fun, and it creates unique opportunities that I quite honestly enjoy. But that's why I've taken both of the rudder on the Montana. Obviously, if you take concealment system on 1, if you don't have this and you don't really need this is like 1% better for someone like me. So it doesn't really matter. Like, it's take the concealment, okay? Just take it. Obviously, accuracy. There's not another skill here for American battleships. It's that much better. There's no downside. So that alone is so much better. And obviously, the amount of shells that are on target, it ends up equaling in damage output as faster reload. So no downside to torturers, and I end up having the same damage per minute. Sure, yeah, I'll take it. Obviously, the commander is the most important aspect of this. With the commander update, a lot of these skills changed, but actually I ended up using them a lot in the way that I was playing because I ended up enjoying it. This incoming fire alert, in my opinion, must be taken to get the most out of this playstyle. This synergizes so well with other skills that you will end up taking and the rudder that it's hard to argue against it. It doesn't explain what the hell it is, I'm sorry, and it never recommends it for anything. So there's not a single build that Wargaming says should have this ever spec. So that's just the level of respect that it gets. He's, the Dangerfield, dating myself with that reference, of ships. But incoming fire alert gives you an opportunity to instantly know the moment that the opposing player pulls the trigger and the server registers that they have fired their guns. Not when you see it, not when the texture's drawn, not when not when you ever have an idea. So no matter where everyone happens to be in the world, you will see if someone decided to directly fire at your ship. If there's a ship right next to you, it will tell you whether they're firing at you or the guy right next to you, because it's only going to go off if it's directly fired at you. Now, that doesn't mean that the dispersion won't hit you. The dispersion, if he's targeting someone that's right next to you, of course. But it's really powerful because it basically tells you whether you have to worry or not in situations that would normally you never have confirmation. So it is nice in that way. It allows you to operate maybe closer to friendlies and with a little bit more confidence that what you're doing, this is actually fired at you. Okay, I can actually dodge. Sorry. Let me avoid the damage as I maneuver my giant ship. But yeah, coupling the active dodge with the indication on screen is important. Preventive maintenance was buffed for secondary survivability and AA survivability, which are both great. There's just no aircraft carriers and submarines in the match. So yeah, the survivability of these equipment, and it's not a secondary battleship, and I don't have secondary gun range. I would be surprised if my secondaries ever fired a single time in this game. And, maybe the AA would fire at some ship launch thing, but yeah, this ends up being a pretty empty skill in this matchup. However, we still do great, so it's not the worst thing to have a couple skills that just don't have any benefit in that match. Just means that in that matchup, it didn't end up to work out in your favor to accentuate them. So maybe you shouldn't. So that, that's something positive, I guess, that, everyone can appreciate. Now, AA defense and anti-submarine weaponry. Obviously, I made use of this. No, of course not. The only thing I benefit from was the ship consumable preparation and reload time. Yeah. Moving on. Adrenaline rush, always great, and especially great for defensive battleships. It's actually better for defensive battleships than any other build. So it's always taken in any other build. So yeah. Easy 3 points. The other 3 points, improve repair party readiness. This is honestly an easy 3 points in a tier 10 battleship. 2 million potential damage. You're making use of active dodge, or if you're not, 2 million is not unattainable. And, a battleship worth his salt in, I don't know, ship tonnage. That would be a lot of salt. If he weighs as much as the salt that he carries, then he should be able to do a lot. And 3 points, 2 million potential, extra repair party, which is invaluable in a lot of scenarios. So it's hard to argue with this, considering it's already what I'm doing naturally with the build. If you already do something, you should definitely make use of all of the benefits of that. Focus fire training, completely useless for this matchup. We spent 6 points that ended up not really being that valuable. Joy. Emergency repair expert. Emergency repair expert, nice defensive skill. It makes the action time of your repair parties better. It gives you an extra repair party charge. It's just really nice for that. Obviously, the last one, fire prevention expert. Now you'll note that I didn't take concealment. Now the reason I don't take concealment, I am a tanky battleship. I do not care about being concealed. I want people to fire at me so that then their shells become potential damage as I actively dodge them. So mechanically, it makes sense. Assault and ambushing, it really kills a lot of that. But you can always use islands to artificially improve your concealment. And it's really up to the player, your opposing player, whether he's going to allow that to, catch him off guard. All right. So the matchup, we've got 4 enemy battleships, 6 enemy cruisers, and 2 enemy destroyers. Not a submarine or aircraft carrier in this match. So obviously that's not something that we get to benefit from. So like I said, we're going into this with skills that are not valuable at all. Now, if you look at the deploy, we're deploying with a Napoli. Secondary Napoli is the rage, so it's going to be a secondary Napoli. We also have the Spanish Tier 9 heavy cruiser. I think it's Andalusia or Andalusia. And then in the middle, we actually have one of our 2 DDs that spawned with a Hindenburg, a Siegfried, 2 battleships, one of them being secondary in the Schlieffen. Then what looks like we've got 2 secondary Napolis with a Montana and another DD over in the east side. So we're a defensive battleship. Now, what that means is that I will be attempting to take fire for my team. I prefer this because I always played as a tank in any RPG or anything like that. So I'm used to doing the things that a tank would do to deflect or absorb attention. Now, obviously in those games, they're sort of locked on target, and there's other aspects of the game that create a threatening environment. This is purely based off of multiplayer psychology, but it does end up working out more often than not because people just want to have fun and they want to shoot you because they think they can. Now, we were spotted before the Yamato fired, so that means that there's something closer. Of course, we see it's the Tier 10 Spanish heavy cruiser, and he ends up going, woo, 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 woo. I don't want none of this. He slows down, and he decides, I'm going to put it in reverse and move back. So I, of course, when the shells are incoming, I'm attempting to play with my speed and heading as they're firing. But I'm doing typical techniques that don't require me to directly control it. Just throwing off the shots sort of passively at this point. So I will be taking more damage than I would normally because there's just so many. But as I'm taking damage, I'm returning fire in a sequential manner. I click the trigger each time, like a semi-auto, like M16, for example. Obviously, you can do burst fire with M16, but you get the idea. So, because I'm doing that, I'm adjusting micro. So we're going to do 2 in the front, 2 in the rear of the Donskoy in an attempt to not give him a way out of damage. Too frequently, and we do pretty good damage actually. Too frequently, players are all or nothing, and the sequential allows you to have a little bit more finesse with that. It's something that I have incorporated in my play. It's not optimal for damage per minute if the target is not moving, but obviously people are moving. People don't want to take damage. They're trying everything in their power to not take damage, so you have to go against that. And as a return, the enemy attempts to fire on us, but it does open him up to a counter battery. And counter battering is important. It's something that a defensive player can make use of. And what I hope to do is I want players to fire their guns at me, and I want to perform the optimal maneuver to absorb the salvo. And then in the 20 seconds that they're still visible, I want to return fire. Now, we don't end up doing good damage there. Dispersion and location, just it didn't end up working out, but a friendly was able to follow up and do massive damage, and our guns are nearly reloaded. So this player, he's desperate. He feels like he can't get out. Because he can't get out, we're going to just attempt to deal with him. I note that he heals. I did not see that the friendly was able to fire off, but the friendly Spaniard able to knock out the opposing Spaniard. A little bit of Spanish Inquisition. But anyway, the tier 10's gone from that flank. We're still taking direct fire. And one of the other aspects of this that's great, because we took direct fire, I adjusted my heading. As I adjusted my heading, I was able to make the enemy shells actually land on the number 1 and number 2 gun turret. And Battleship gun turrets are basically shields. I mean, they're literally doors of armor that you carry around. So you probably want to have that armor take damage over the thinner armor that's just there to hold the structure up. Oof, we get into a really bad ambush shot. Kremlin, 30,000. Boom, gone. Very vulnerable. But I'm not going to make it influence my salvo because this person's vulnerable and other players are shooting at him. So the combined focus fire is far more valuable than if I were to do 20,000 to the Kremlin. I'm just going to try and avoid the Kremlin's location. I was going to sail up into the Kremlin, but of course we're going to sail back. Because we are able to adjust the heading of the ship, our back guns actually absorb. And again, it's really great to carry around walls of armor. You should use them. So we're able to fire at the enemy German battlecruiser and not able to take him out. Only one shell actually does damage to him, but he's really in a horrible position. He has spec'd and spent even more on a secondary build that is now not useful at all. So, you know, the use case is subjective. Ooh, broadside, gotta go. Broadside, broadside, broadside. Sequential fire, we're just adjusting it with the angle of the target. Yamato in the background fires at us, so see you later, friend. We adjust our heading and we adjust our speed, and the shells, they fall harmlessly. We have farmed 1.6 million potential damage, and it's great. Absolutely great. The enemy Kremlin's moving up. Unfortunate. I am going to attempt to disable his guns because we do have a side shot, so we are able to incapacitate one of them. Not able to incapacitate a second. Now you might go, why would you go for the incapacitation versus the damage? Well, the damage isn't going to kill him, and he could very easily kill one of my teammates in that single salvo. So by keeping him alive for one more salvo, and unfortunately the Kremlin, he backs up, he makes use of the island, so even with my aircraft I can't fire at him. But by stalling this player, I am allowed a better position. My teammate is allowed to do more damage. He can potentially get into a better position. And one of the Napolis, the one on this flank, he's able to get up into a forward position, maybe spook the Kremlin to move forward. And of course, we're going to take advantage of this broadside Kremlin, and we just do huge amount of damage, but not enough to kill him. Not enough to kill him. Bit of poetic justice that the tier 9 Spanish heavy cruiser that just got annihilated by the Kremlin, his torpedoes actually kill him, so I'm happy for that. And the Kremlin's gone. Enemy Napoli, he's a little too brazen here. We get a little bit of a location, but he's a little too angled for us to punish it completely. What I'm really hoping to do is hit his guns. Now I catch sight of the Yamato's intent too late, but I'm able to throw the shells high just a little bit. And maybe that's one shell less damage, but it can all add up. We did farm the 2 million potential damage, so we did get the extra charge, and we just need to use them. We get a broadside on the Yamato. And honestly, they can't really do much to us. Oh yeah, we've got the full investment right there of that AA cooldown reduction. It was so worth it. This is obviously the worst case scenario, and we didn't really get anything from that 2 points. Yeah, there are just games where it just doesn't end up working out. But I shouldn't feel negative because look at the game. I mean, 188,000 damage done, 5 citadels, Confederate, and the victory is in sight. So I'm gonna move up, put pressure on the Napoli, but I don't want to put pressure on him to force him to torpedo me. I just want him to consider that he might be dealing with me shortly. Speaking of dealing with me shortly, the Rune is a little too broadside, so we sequential fire into him, and I don't aim the first one well, but every subsequent salvo did damage. I think we did like 15,000, not 1,500. But we didn't finish the Rune off, but we did drop off detection. There's nothing to detect us. So we have the element of surprise. Enemy Napoli, he expects it. You can run from it, but, you know, destiny arrives just the same. And, now I could go for the broadside, but he could angle, and I could ricochet. The higher probability is just aim right at front guns, and the shells will be carried into the superstructure, which has no armor from that angle. It won't have any armor from any angle, and because of the size of my ship, I actually basically shoot the shells down into the enemy. Just does a huge amount of damage. He probably felt like, oh yeah, he's gonna ricochet, and he'll make that same mistake that all battleships do. Not today, friend. I don't know what happened. He just detonated, and that is a victory, and a complete victory, I think. Just a great showcase of the defensive build, and 220,000 damage, 1.5 million credits, Confederate, high caliber, and then Dreadnought, 2 kills, 5 citadels, 2,500 base XP. And if we go into the detailed report, now we actually received 123,000 damage done, and 82,000 of it was probably from that stupid Kremlin, but no, the Kremlin did 67,000. Oh, great. He did a huge amount of damage. Oh, I actually did 67, sorry. He only did 30,000 or whatever to us. But yeah, we took a huge amount of damage. I had my pants down, what could I say? But we were able to survive, be beneficial for our team. We were able to farm 2.5 million potential damage, and I don't think it involved a single torpedo. So that was just shells fired at our ship. Where those shells could have landed if they were fired at anyone else in this game, who can say what would actually happen with the game? If I went for, let's say, a secondary battleship, maybe I get a kill early on, maybe I get 2 kills, but I don't farm 2.5 million potential damage. If I'm rushing forward, I probably farm half of that, if that, maybe 1.2. So that's a lot of salvos that would normally be for someone else in your game. So it allows your team more time to get an advantage. And in that time that they get an advantage, you get a bigger advantage and a bigger advantage. And then all of a sudden you have a 6-ship advantage, and there's no way the enemy is coming back. So from really investing in active dodging, attempting to just have players fire at this ship, bad concealment, or constantly firing so that enemies will fire at you is part of being a defensive battleship. You wouldn't invest in an offensive playstyle if you never fired your gun, right? So you wouldn't invest in a defensive playstyle if you never intended to play defensively. So that's part of what you need to do, potentially, to give your team a chance to win. And I think we did just that in this game. In the comments, tell me what you think. Obviously, 6 points from our commander build did not have any relevance to this game. And if we're being completely honest, we never got the extra charge and we never used the emergency. So, there's a lot of skills that never actually were useful, but they could be useful given the situation. Those 6 points, though, they just were never going to be useful. Maybe you change those out for something else. What kind of a build do you create then? Can you mix and match the defensive skills that I highlighted with some offensive skills? Maybe the super AP damage. So then you do 7.5% higher AP. That's a 3-point skill. I can drop Focus Fire AA. I can change the 2-point because you have to have a 2-point. I can either get Vigilance, Brisk, or Faster Turret Traverse. So either I'm faster, I have better armor for torpedoes that get through, and I can see them better, or I have faster turret traverse. Or I get priority, and I get the amount of targets on my ship. So there's a lot of opportunities for a player to take some of these skills that synergize really nicely and just apply them to their build. Incoming fire alert, the improve repair party, and then emergency and fire prevention. They really all, and adrenaline. There's so much that defensively exists in the Battleship build, commander skills option wise. So yeah, there's a lot that you can synergize with, and I encourage you to try and find what works for you. So thanks again for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch you guys on the next one.